So you found a new system online for mass combat, you get excited and you add it to your game. You run a combat of a bunch of legionaries with iron weapons against some Bronze Age civilizations, and the legionaries win. And then you do another combat of tanks versus a bunch of wild boars, and the tanks wins too. And you're starting to wonder to yourself, why am I using a system at all? When should I use systems? By the end of this video, you will know when to use systems and why to use systems, when to add these things to your game. But before we start, I want you to go to the blah blah below, that's the comment, and let me know what is a system that you decided to add to your game that's not originally in it that made your game better. This is a small channel, I don't get many comments, so if you comment below, I'm gonna see it, heart it, and probably respond, so let's get a conversation going. Why do we use systems at all? Why do we add systems to our games? Well, let's think about it. TTRPGs are conversation games. Right, you are the GM and you describe a world to your players and eventually ask your players, what does your character do? The player tells you what their character does, and sometimes their action has an obvious resolution. For example, they say, I go to the coffee station and get some coffee, and you tell them, yes, your character can go there and get some coffee. That much is easy. But sometimes the results of the character actions are not obvious. For example, if the player says their character tries to jump over the chasm, it's not immediately clear whether they succeed or not. The most basic responsibility of the GM in this conversation game is to resolve ambiguity. And by the way, if you want a little more information on what rules are and resolving ambiguity, I have another video on it, and it's going to be here or here, I can never remember. But in short, we use systems to resolve these ambiguities because we want the results to be consistent and impartial. And if we always make rulings on the spot, we can't guarantee that the rulings will be those things. As a side bonus, doing this increases verisimilitude because we imagine the natural world as being, well, consistent and impartial. But here is a potential contradiction. When we make a system or choose a system to play, we want a system that conforms to our intuitions, that conforms to what our rulings would be. For example, if the system has fall damage, we imagine that the higher the character falls from, the more damage they take, and at a certain height, the damage could become lethal. As another example, a group of soldiers with iron weapons should probably more often than not win a combat against a group of characters with bronze weapons. That said, the probability should be reasonable, not overwhelmingly one way or the other. So this brings us to a problem. Let's imagine that we are very impartial and consistent people, which is reasonable, and some people are like this. What's the point of using a system at all, if all we want is a system that conforms to the intuitions we already hold? It turns out that we want two contradictory things out of our systems. One, we want systems that conform to our intuitions. We want to look at the results that the system gives us and say, yeah, that makes sense. We want systems that typically give us obvious answers, but we don't rely on systems for obvious answers. After all, the answers are obvious. We could have come up with this answer, but we want the system to do it for us. And then here comes the contradiction. The second thing we want out of our systems is to be surprised. After all, if all we wanted is obvious answers, we don't need a system. We don't rely on the system for that. The answers are obvious. We want our systems to give us surprising answers, especially in complex situations. Answers that only make sense intuitively in retrospect. I think it's not the obvious answers, but these kind of surprising answers that are obvious in retrospect that make a system feel real. Because here, instead of us imposing verisimilitude on the system, in choosing or designing the system to conform to our intuition, the system exists independently of us and portrays a fictional world that makes sense in non-obvious ways. So all of this to say, if you choose to use a system, you should want to, yes, have the obvious answers, but also be surprised. So when you choose to apply a system to your game, for example, climate, overland travel, disease, ask yourself, do I want to be surprised by the results of this system? Or do I just want an obvious answer that makes intuitive sense for everybody? Now, some of you might say, yes, I always want to be surprised. I want to portray a world that makes as much sense as possible. But be careful. Imagine you're running a game about being heroic adventurers and one of the adventurers gets sick from, say, the flu. If you're using a disease system, it might say that the hero will probably recover after 2 weeks, but there is a small chance that they will die due to this disease. Ask yourself, is this something you want in your heroic fantasy game? Do you want a chance for your character to die of the flu? The answer is probably not. So I understand that systems seem neat, and many systems seem fun. But ask yourself, and be honest with yourself, Do I want to be surprised, or am I okay with an obvious answer and an intuitive answer that makes sense to everyone on the table? That's everything I have to say in this video. To sum up, we discussed why you would choose to use a system if you want to be consistent and impartial in your rulings. And if you use a system, your rulings will be obvious most of the time, but surprise you some of the time. And I explained why, if you don't want to be surprised and you just want the obvious answer, you should not be using a system. You should save you and your table the overhead of using a system and the risk of something going horribly wrong and having to figure out how to retcon it by just relying on your intuition, making a ruling, and moving on. If you like this video, make sure to take your fist and slam it into your monitor. I want you to smash that like button a number of times. Let's do 113. And also make sure you subscribe if you like this kind of video, and hit the bell. We have a Discord. Come join the conversation. We talk about everything we talk about on this channel. This is I can't tell you how much this stuff helps me, because I honestly don't know. I don't know how the YouTube algorithm works, but I'm sure comments and likes and subscriptions help. So that's pretty much it. If you like this video, I'm going to put another video on the screen right now, which, let's see, is going to be about, how about it's going to be the same video if you didn't click it in the beginning, but what are rules? There's the common question of, well, what are rules for? But in this video that I have on the screen, I really try to answer the question, what are rules to us as GMs? The answer might not be as obvious as you think. That's pretty much it. This is your chance to click off before an ad plays or something, find another video that you want to watch, etc., etc. That's pretty much it. 3, 2, 1, that's your time. I'll see you later.